Coming up on Mount Hermeneutics, we're talking social media and the impacts that it has on religion. We're able to reach more people than ever before, but that also means that more people than ever before are able to reach more people than ever before. So is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? I don't know. We'll talk about it. So keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts, but you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck.
But what is faith? Find out exclusively here at Mount Hermeneutics. Nowhere else. If anyone else who tells you what faith is, they're full of crap. Listen to us.
Very well. Oh, shit. Color me impressed, Negro. Mount Hermeneutics is free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. And you can find us simply by searching for Mount Hermeneutics. If it's your first time with us, I'm Andre. That's Matt. That's Brian. Fellas, what's happening?
Hey, Trey.
Hey, guys. How's everybody doing?
Doing
All right. All right.
Yeah.
I got a storm rolling in. I don't know if you can hear it. But
The winter storm?
a winter, yeah.
You're gonna have thunder snow?
I don't know. I don't think it's cold enough.
That's a good name for a band.
Thunder.
It actually is a pretty cool day.
Matt,
everybody,
I don't see. Where's David Robinson?
Thunderstorm.
Thunder snow.
We need to snatch that up before the Nazis get it.
That's a big concern that the Nazis are going to steal.
They steal all the cool storm-related names for their dumb hate groups.
Oh yeah.
And so
we just take it back, like Porch Monkey. We just take it back. What's wrong with Porch Monkey? That's racist. No, I'm taking it back.
I'll let you take that one. I can't do anything because if I call anything I do Stormfront, well, they're going to be,
I mean, you are evil. I mean, you're white.
What if you combine them and it's Thunder, Porch, Snow Monkeys?
I don't think I can get away with it. You probably wouldn't get away with it either because you're.
I'm pretty sure that's an LGBTQ group. So I don't
know. by the time we're done, we're
gonna get like copyright infringement.
Well, Trump probably made it illegal, so it's fine.
He probably did. Pete Hegseth, like, not on my core.
Right.
And since I'm on Camp Pendleton right now, I'm subject to the rules of old Pistol Pete. So.
Pistol Pete? Is that what people are calling him, or you just call him?
No, that's what I just call him right now.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah. It's gonna stick. It started here. They'll say it started here.
So yeah, just quick as a what's going on in case anybody recognizes my background looks different. I'm in a hotel, although I'm not out of town. Yeah, that's a thing. So we had
just leave it at that and let the rumors fly.
Yeah, right. Like Carrie?
I'm still wearing a wedding ring, so
okay.
No, our house is being worked on and we can't sleep there, so we've been displaced. It was funny though, because Carrie made the comment. She was like, going to a hotel in the town I live in feels sketchy.
The Japanese do it all the time.
What do you mean?
They have like the love motels.
Again, sketchy.
Right. Like, it's not sketch. It's not sketch. Like their whole family lives with them, and then in order to like have a little time to yourself, you got to like.
That's just
roll out. That's why all the
roll out.
Yeah, like that's what like in Japan and Korea they have like themed hotels and stuff. So I got to stay in a themed hotel just because I need a place to stay, and I go in there and I'm like, what in the Adam and Eve is happening in this jungle environment? Like
I saw that in the Wolverine when he was on the run from whatever ninja cult was chasing him. And
there was always a cult chasing him.
Yeah.
Brian knows all about cults now. So
I do.
So when he watches it, he probably gets a little triggered, and then he gets in a fighting stance, pulls out his katana, and
Let's leave that story off the podcast. All right.
It just gets to grooving. Social media, huh?
Yeah, social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this was a fan request topic, and I thought it was kind of appropriate and also ironic because we're a religious podcast and we're using social media to put our ideas into the ether.
It's
But-
true. And we're just like a bunch of guys too. We're
Right.
not even like,
We've got no credentials, no
Yeah.
reason to believe us or listen to us or any of that. I mean, we're right, but
Duh.
but there's no reason to listen to us. But yeah, the idea was just, there's so much out there. And how do you know what's right and wrong? And like, how do you parse it? And so that was that was the idea of the conversation.
Is it a net positive? The fact that so many people are able to be reached.
It's tough to say. I mean, I guess I don't even know that you can answer that question quantifiably or objectively, right? Because on one hand, it's easy to say if one person can be brought to God, then it's all worth it. But can somebody be wholly displaced or, sent down the wrong path because of
Right. That's what I was gonna say. Like you might think you're getting good information, but
is like, I don't know how that's any different now with social media than it was 50 years ago. I mean, yeah, you're in a church where you tend to hear these things in church, and it tends to be, I guess, I don't know. I wasn't going to church 50 years ago, but I think there's a lot more discussion between Christians about theology and doctrine and stuff now than there was back then. But I don't know that just because you're getting it from a church on Sunday morning, that necessarily mean, I mean, of course, that shouldn't surprise anybody who listens to the show that I would say that, but I don't know that democratizing theology and Bible instruction puts us in any worse place than we were in before. I mean, I think, churches all disagree with each other. You go down the street, from a Baptist church to a Calvinist church to a Lutheran church to a Catholic church to an Eastern Orthodox church, and they're all saying different things, and they're all saying those people down the street are wrong about these key issues. I think social media kind of gives it kind of breaks up the echo chamber a bit. I think it's
I mean, that's definitely I think I like that take, Brian, because I think you're right. I don't think, I mean, first of all, none of us
I was going to go there actually. Yeah.
None of us were in
What's
church
that?
50 years ago, right? I mean,
I might have
close.
been. I probably was.
You know what I meant. We're all right at 50, so that was the point of the joke. But
Right. I was in my mother's womb, and she was a churchgoer at the time. So I might have been.
Anyway, but I think you're right in that people in churches don't tend to have strong theological debates at church.
Right.
Like
that's a good way to get kicked out, or
Right.
at least
That's-
make yourself
that's what I hear.
unpopular. Yeah.
or just
Is it-
put yourself in the outs with the cliques and the people.
Yeah.
And, most people are terrified to disagree with their pastor and have a different point of view, whatever. So I think that's an interesting point. And I certainly think that just having research tools is stronger now, right? Like having access to a web version of a intralinear Bible and not having to tote one around with you. Could you imagine like carrying a backpack? You're like, hang on a second. You whip out an intralinear and throw it on the table and start flipping through it, and you got to pull out Strong's Concordance to go with it. And
That's exactly what I did in the 90s.
I believe you.
You probably looked a lot like my guy from Sling Blade, walking around with his 4 books tied up with a rope, right?
I reckon I'll check my concordance.
I spilled mustard on it.
Brian, what are you going to do with that strong concordance? I aim to kill
reckon
you
I'm
with
gonna
it.
kill you with it.
I aim to send you to him. That's what I'm aiming to do.
But
So,
the reality is that I think more people have more access to really good information. Now they have more access to really bad information also,
Yeah.
but they definitely aren't stuck in a pocket. It makes me wonder if somebody could pull off a cult today, like a, you know,
Yeah,
you
definitely.
you got to isolate them first, which is a tactic anyway. That's the age-old tactic, and yeah, for sure.
I think people are probably at least as likely to fall into a cult today as they are at any time. I mean, getting information on the internet it doesn't meet your social needs. It doesn't, and that's what cults typically, that's how they get you in, is they give you a place they make you feel like you belong, and then you're more susceptible to the bad information. But
it's so easy to demonize the internet as well, right? Like you know why they're saying that? Because the devil runs the internet. Don't listen to them. Come over here and stay here and read this book with me, right? And listen to brother George over there who's gonna marry all your kids.
But it just seems like, a cult. I mean, joining a cult, I guess I said people don't join cults, and Brian almost did in 2025.
Right,
so I guess
different.
but I'm thinking
that's
more
gonna be
like
a running joke forever.
a death cult is more kind of what I was thinking. Like, it seems like people would be less likely to fall into that in today's world. Maybe I'm just being optimistic. We haven't had one happen in recent times. Is it because of the internet, or is it just because we're due? I guess that's a fair,
right.
Well, there's only
time will
been,
tell.
how do you, I assume you mean like a suicide cult, like Heaven's
Like a
Gate
Jim
or
Jones
Jonestown.
yeah.
But
Those
that's
were
the only one. I mean, you say Branch Davidians, but they were murked. So
Yeah, Jonestown, that they were doing, they didn't do that voluntarily. They were held at gunpoint.
right.
And a lot of people weren't told what was in the flavor aid.
I love that you said flavor aid.
It,
it's accurate. Right?
It is accurate, yeah.
We try to be accurate here.
Yeah,
that's what we do.
I think that's after we had a big argument in our group chat over that, didn't we? I probably would have just called it Kool-Aid if it wasn't for that. But anyway,
I only knew it was flavor aid because my mom used to buy flavor aid.
Yeah.
But then when I saw it, I was like, Mom, you can't ever buy this again. What are you trying to kill me? Like, fuck is wrong with you?
I would say Islam and Heaven's Gate are really the only two examples of a cult where people voluntarily kill themselves. And yes,
the martyr mentality, is that what you're saying?
I mean, Heaven's Gate, it was mass suicide. It was voluntary. Islam, it's transactional, but yeah. But anyway,
so almost apropos. Have you seen?
I love that Brian just thinks he's going to slip in Islam and Heaven's Gate on the same level and just move on with no more information given.
Have you seen The Menu? The movie, the Menu.
I've seen a couple of clips.
Ray
and I want to watch it. I just haven't.
It's a dark comedy. Actually, I laughed through the whole thing because it's hilarious. But basically, it's a chef death cult, and they also, spoiler alert, they try to murder all the guests, and you'll see the end. But
yeah, the clip I saw was like some guys like, I just want a really good cheeseburger, and they spared him or something, at least momentarily, because he just really wanted good food. He wasn't trying to be all hyper pretentious or something. That was like the one clip I saw.
Wow, that clip actually fucks the whole movie up. But I mean, way to go. Like, anyway, so
I blame the internet.
Gave away the ending.
I blame social media. I didn't ask to see that. I just it showed up in my reel.
Like it's the heroine protagonist.
The Queen's Gambit chick.
Yeah, who looks
Anya
it's like
Taylor-Joy.
I can't tell if she's pretty or if she's not. Like, I can't.
She used to be beautiful, then she got
she looks the same. She looks like an alien to me.
No, she got a bunch of work done, and now she looks anorexic.
She
But,
could just be anorexic.
Her eyes
no,
wrap around her head.
she got something done
Are
to
you
her
sure?
face.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
think her face is unique. That's what I'll say. But
I mean,
some
it was unique
she's
before.
she grows on me.
Okay, but so Matt, what do you think the like the main concerns of, you might have already covered this, but of social media and its impact
Well,
on
it's just like,
Christianity?
so here's an example. So, you know, my dad, right? He'll text me questions because, you know, we'll do an episode and it won't fully resonate or it doesn't fully, you know, click with him. So he gets confused because he gets inundated with all of these pastors online saying different things. So, example, he's not at peace with the take that we don't go to heaven because of history and, you know, being, you know, just hearing it and saying it over and over and over again. So he'll start watching threads and then the algorithm pings because he's watching things about heaven, and then he'll watch 14 pastors make all these scripture quotes and have entire sermons about going to heaven. So he's sending them to me like that, like volume matters, right? He's like, what about this guy? What about this guy? What about this guy? And I'm
What
like,
is he,
well,
Johnny
what do you want me
Taylor?
to say? They're wrong. And then like then he'll see one that agrees with the take of the shows. And he's like, well, now I'm even more confused because which one, they can't all be right. And I'm like, you're right.
They're
They
not.
can't all be right.
We're right.
So the point is just like, you know, and because of the way social media, specifically these new TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, shorts, reels work, the more you watch a specific topic, the more you get of it, but you don't necessarily know the quality of the source material, right? So you're just getting stuff. And if you're using it as a way to create a worldview or a theology, it's really tough. I think that's the point. And because we as Americans, at least, are increasingly pulling our information, I'm going to say, whether it's news or whatever, we gain it through social media, right? Like so this is right on the heels of our last episode where we spent an entire hour and a half, 2 hours talking about Wes Huff being on the Joe Rogan show and how that was a great thing for Christendom and the world. Like social media is how people learn about things in today's world. People aren't going to the news to tune in to see what's going on in the world. They're using the news really as a trigger mechanism to be aware of something. And then they go to social media to go, what's going on? And then the information comes.
Yeah. For me, I don't see that social media or the internet is really, it's a different, it's on the same continuum as mass media in general. And I would like, and I've probably talked about this before. I have a blog article about it that we'll link it in the comments. But I would say that it's kind of a mixed bag. I can't say it's good or bad, but I like storytelling. It used to be a sacred vocation. It was something that was that was the central job of a religious functionary, was to kind of be the custodian of the sacred story within Christianity, within pagan religion. You know, shamans and seers and priests and prophets, like they were the purveyors of the story that defined the community and their identity. And you kind of have these, you know, these obvious examples in the Bible, obviously, the narrative of the Bible, the Torah, that was the sacred story that defined the Jews. Greeks and Romans had the Iliad and the Odyssey, then the Aeneid. Hindus have the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and basically every civilization has its national epic that is also its religious text. That, you know, the two aren't identical, but there's enough overlap that you can pretty much put them together.
churches kind of, they fulfilled that function in Western civilization for most of the past 2,000 years. Churches were the geographical center of most towns. So even if you weren't a believer, this was still kind of the unofficial town hall. Everybody kind of gathered there on Sunday, and you raised your kids up in this community that was centered on the church and its stories. And that was kind of the primary method that everybody, and storytelling is the primary method that we get our values and our sense of identity and social place and all of that stuff. It's basically like every civilization and community is built on that foundation of a shared story. And that's then the church kind of enjoyed this status as the default purveyor of the story. Even if people didn't believe, it was still kind of the moral center of Western life until the early 20th century with the advent of mass media. And there's also like on another side to this that's I don't want to give a whole TED talk here and monopolize the conversation, but it's
Too late.
It's well, I'm gonna finish because I'm almost done anyway. But culture used to be kind of transmitted from parent, like kind of linearly and generationally. Like kids learn about the world, about culture from their parents. Their parents were the ones who took them to church and insisted they go and impressed upon them at home the things they learned at church. And so people basically learned about the world from their parents. So in this kind of top-down linear fashion, with the advent of mass media, though, first with radio shows and like movie theaters, but then with TV and movies and the internet streaming and all this stuff, we're kind of inundated with stories now. We're just kind of being bombarded, and it's sort of, the church hasn't really adapted to that. The church still kind of coasts on its kind of expected default status as the storytellers, even though it hasn't had that role in generations. But in culture, instead of coming top down linearly from parental authorities and serving to kind of like strengthen familiar bonds, now it all comes in from the side, and the parents are kind of cut off from children in that regard. Kids are going and getting it from their peers, and they're talking about the TV shows that they're watching together. And it on its face, there doesn't sound to be like there's anything sinister about that, but we can see how that's fundamentally transformed our values from decade to decade. But it's been in small increments, but it's, I don't think we've really collectively reckoned with how much this has transformed human society. The fact that just the way that we consume our stories and what form they take, and just the proliferation of those stories. That's not disconnected from the fact that, in current year, a man can put on a dress and declare himself to be a woman. And there's a certain portion of the culture that insists we take that seriously. That profound, 50 years ago, that guy would have been locked up in lunatic asylum, and anybody who agreed with him along with him, separate padded rooms, of course, but just that's kind of testament to the power that the shift in our cultural delivery and the content of our stories has had on us.
Don't you think it's fair to say that there's opportunities for that to have been a net good thing also? And,
sure.
And before you answer, here's what I mean, just to be clear. What if you were growing up in an area that, decided slavery was good, blacks are subhuman, right? And you're not able to get any kind of counterbalanced perspective or point of view on that topic, right? And then you would have been obligated to grow up with that as your core, value system, right?
Yeah, and by the way,
that is what happened.
Well, right.
And by the way, I do consider it a net positive already. But the that's a different part of the conversation, but
yeah, it's definitely. I think it's a net positive. Other than the fact that because generations have grown up getting their storytelling this way, parents have completely surrendered to this, right? So they don't have to instill the values because the world does it for them. Your
Surrender,
school
opt
does it
out kind of thing,
yeah,
right? But
they
they weren't
abdicated.
pushed to the side, though, I think is a point to make. I don't mean to
Correct.
cut you off.
I know that's exactly that is my point. My point is because as a child years ago, that's how they got their information, whether their dad believed it or not, or let it. So the next generation, it gets a little looser. And you know, just watching the Super Bowl with my son and his friends, you know, I'm like, no, let's talk about football, right? Let's talk about, back in the 80s and 90s, like, okay, pops, right? So, but it's just one of the, but they know it, right? They're only, 26 years old, but they know 80s sports because, Cooper's boy, his dad told him, and then I do.
I think I almost opted out, to your point, right? So as I was raising my kids, I didn't really appreciate how much was being conveyed from a value system point of view that I wasn't included in, right? And I think I caught Alyssa. I almost didn't catch it with Alyssa, to be honest. I mean, she got the values from our day-to-day conversations because I was around her and I was involved in her childhood, but I certainly wasn't, actively playing, goalie against whatever was coming at her from the outside in.
Yeah.
Until she was probably about 14 or so. And fortunately, I still had enough of a relationship that I was able to start reeling some of that back in. I caught it with Austin a lot sooner. I'll never forget one day. Austin was like 12, 11, comes home from school one day. And he basically just kind of casually throws out that, how did he say it? It was political science stuff. He was learning about Mao and, the wars and all of that. And he's like, I'm not so sure that, communism is that bad. And I said, what did you just say? And he said it again. And I was like, yo, have a seat. And it was like, we're about to have a real conversation. I was like, lay it on me. And I didn't just like attack him, right? I was like, state your case. Like, I want to hear what you're thinking. I want to hear what you heard at school. And I want to hear where your brain's at. And then I want to have a real conversation. And I didn't try to win that day either. I was like, all right, let's talk about this some more tomorrow, or like in a couple of, I want some of this to percolate and I want to calm down and not have this visceral, get out of my house, you commie pinko, whatever. But then what was really funny was, true to how my children have learned my personality, Austin figured out what a sensitive, hot topic this was in my circle. And he started like trolling others in my circle, specifically Jake.
That's the name that pops in my mind.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Because he's an emotional character.
So
for sure.
So fast forward, Carrie and I are in.
I like to poke Jake with a stick sometimes myself.
Everybody does. It's good sport. So fast forward, Carrie and I are in Hawaii. And Jake and John and Andrew, they're not babysitting. They just are all kind of like, being available to Austin in case he, this, that, and other thing. And the movie Midway had just came out. And so Jake was going to go see Midway. So he, hey, Austin, you want to go see Midway? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, that's kind of apropos because I'm at Pearl Harbor today, kind of deal. So I'm at Pearl Harbor physically, and Jake and Austin are going to see Midway. And I start getting texts from Jake. Your son's a freaking commie.
So good. So good. Because he's like, watch this.
And I had to text Austin. I'm like, you need to be a little careful because Jake's emotional, levels don't fully push this because I'm not here to save you.
He might throw you out the car, like when you're driving home on the freeway. No, Jake, I don't think you'd do that, buddy.
But it was, so, but the point of all that is, I almost opted out to the point you're making, Brian, about, you know, parents not being involved in that value, you know, exchange or,
Yeah.
you know, setting the tone. And I didn't know better. And that's the thing, right? I got lucky. It wasn't like I was hyper aware of it and caught
you
it.
caught it.
Oh, I
right.
knew this was
Yeah.
going to happen. I was just like, wait, what's going on? And I happened to
Mine
just like
happened
pick
at
my head up and catch it.
different
Yeah.
speeds with all three of my children, right? So, and then with their three different personalities, it was hard to catch it. Like, I mean, I have a commie right now, so love her.
Right now,
I think we had her on the show, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. So, but you know, I think what's kind of fun about this algorithm rabbit hole inducing thing that's on the internet is because, especially when we do research for the show, I just go on YouTube and I type something in, so my algorithm is all over the place. And a lot of times, I've very much played the role of the devil's advocate for some of the things on here. So I've got some wild things that pop up on my YouTube for sure.
I can only imagine.
So not to mention that I have a disposition that heads toward, you know, the weird occult religious stuff anyway. But you know, if you go into with a mindset of something that you want to know, the internet will confirm it for you. So if you're wrong already from jump, it will confirm and silo and just keep you on that path. And it's a semi-dangerous thing, you know, where if you come to if you decide that Christianity is bad and wrong and the Bible is evil, it is super easy to type that into YouTube and get bombarded with content that proves that every single day.
But you know, that's just as true of a public library. Like if people
No, it's not though, because everything today is sound bites and clips, right?
It spoon feeds it to you. But I think the function, it's whatever you do, it's a function of how honest or dishonest you are with yourself.
I agree with you, but you can't tell me that the effort to go into a library and read content is the same as getting a 20-second clip that tells you exactly what you wanted to hear and have it resonate with you.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's just as easy if you are hey, I wonder what the other side is. I wonder what the opposition has to say about this position that's very dear to me. You can find that just as easily.
Why would you want to wonder that if you're already set?
Intellectual honesty that's my point. Is like, it's not like you can't blame the internet for that. You can blame individual people's just intellectual dishonesty. Like,
but
if you
I think there's something in the middle here. I think you're both right, Brian. I think your point about being honest with yourself, first of all, there's a lot of people that don't know they're dishonest with themselves. Like there's a difference between being purposely versus, you know, unintentionally dishonest. And I think secondly, an individual that's going to spend the time and energy to travel to a library and start doing research is already more intellectually honest than a person who's going to sit on their phone at 3 o'clock in the morning because they can't sleep spinning reels.
But the difference is, if you know, whether you're living in current year and you have the internet, or you're living in the 80s and you only have the public library, if you're seeking out information at all, I mean, it's still going to be a function of how honest you are with yourself, whether you're deliberately building an echo chamber around yourself, or you're looking to challenge your preconceptions.
With the speed and the reach, you don't even have to look. It comes to you. And I think that's
a valid point. I agree with that.
You're not looking, it just pops up. You know,
it's a velocity thing. I think that's really what it comes down to. I think, you know, if you were to spin and your algorithm is skewed and you get 47, you know, shorts in the next 48 hours, that feels like the whole world just told you this is the way it is.
But it is fun to see, you know, because
fun.
because also, you know, the internet does crazy things, like, you know, Wes Huff became a overnight sensation, and then there
Yeah.
was no less than 10 you know suggestions for me, like why Wes Huff was wrong, why Wes Huff debates himself, Wes Huff, and you got it from the Catholic, the Lutheran, the Christian dude, that it's always the young people. So it's kind of interesting that all of a sudden you type a name in and you get all the good, the bad, and the ugly, regardless of whoever's counteracting him is right or wrong.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, at the end of the day, Brian, I think you used it. You said, you're talking about, being, honest with yourself or whatever. I think it just comes down to the individual has to be aware that the algorithm isn't looking for accuracy. The algorithm is simply looking to satiate your interest. And I think that's an important component of what's coming into your social feeds, right? First of all, it's highly driven by your circle, right? Because your friends and suggestions are going to heavily skew that. And then, I just learned a new phrase the other day at work, that there's a thing called AI hallucination. And artificial intelligence doesn't know the difference between right, wrong, or fake. It just knows information exists. And so AI can be wrong, and it's often wrong. And it has to be double checked and fact checked and reviewed. And that's something that we don't do to our feeds, right? Because at the end of the day, that's just AI. It's crude AI, but it's AI nonetheless. I don't know how you sort that, because there's not a function that I'm aware of in any of the social media feeds that I consume that says, is this right? Do you want more of this? Right? Like, there's not really that. Like, you can click on ads and say, why am I getting this ad? But I'm not aware of a way to tune something out of your algorithm. I don't know.
Yeah, but
You got to change it by searching from other shit.
Yeah.
What's the
And I think if you're aware of that, and you have a commitment to being intellectually honest, and you deliberately search out the opposition to the things you believe to find out what their arguments are, I mean, that if you do that habitually, that's going to change the algorithm too. So,
but that's a tactic that you would have to be aware to do. I don't
agree.
think
Yeah.
I don't think that's just about being intellectually honest with yourself. I think it's something that you'd have to learn or be told, or be like, hey, you ever think about this? And then that's in the forefront of somebody's mindset. I don't think it just comes naturally to
Well,
everyone.
yeah, you definitely don't get that just by being passive and accepting what comes to you. You have to recognize that there's a machine that's feeding you what you've told it you want, and you have to, I mean, you should be skeptical about your own infallibility and the things you believe.
No, it's
So how do
aliens.
we bring this back home to religion? Because I think we got into like social media broadly, but if a person's using social media for religious experience, growth, learnings, like, it's hard enough to have an opinion or to know. I mean, it's hard for people to know which stinking translation to read. Like, like, how do you fact check theology in real time, especially if you're still learning or trying to develop your own theology?
Well,
you know,
sorry, go ahead, Dre.
it's funny. Just a Google AI search on social media and the impacts on religion, and it gives the positives. So it increases your evangelism and your outreach. It helps your community building, because you can, like, hey, advertise, come here, and lots of people will see it. Spiritual encouragement, so you can just reach more people. Educational and theological discussions. And then the negative impacts: distraction from devotion, because excessive scrolling and engagement, comparison, and insecurity. So that's an interesting, because I think we touched on that, just talking about, like, you're insecure about what your own beliefs, and then if this machine tells you that you're wrong, then you're going to believe that you're wrong. Cyberbullying, Focus on outward appearances. But then it says the key points to consider, and I think this is what we were trying to hit on, is discernment. So evaluate content carefully and be critical of the information shared on social media. Positive messaging. Focus on sharing uplifting, encouraging content. So that comes from you, right? That's the, hey, if you're going to focus on religious stuff, you should probably focus on encouraging and uplifting things. And digital stewardship, which is, are you promoting love and compassion and construction and constructive dialogue? So I think what AI is saying, like, yeah, it's a good tool. It can jack you up, but as long as you're positive with a positive mental attitude, then you too can use it in a positive way.
Is the Google AI going to tell you, hey, don't use me, I'm poisoned?
No, it's not. It's saying use me, but use me for good. Don't use me for evil. That's what it's saying. That's what I think it's saying.
I think that comparison thing, or the I forget the word that it used, but
discernment.
But before that, what it struck me of is that, they say one of the biggest problems with social media writ large is people comparing themselves to others and feeling insecurity. That's what it was.
Comparison and insecurity.
Yeah, because you see people on their best days on social media,
right?
And then you're watching it when you're not having your best day, because when you're having your best day, your phone's in your pocket, right? Unless you're just taking selfies.
Especially because my algorithm is in the fitness space. That is, wild.
Especially because you're seeing people when they're show prep ready and all of that. You're not seeing them when they're fattest.
They're only taking angles. They're filtering.
You're not seeing them when they're hurt and they're in rehab and they can't lift and all that kind of stuff, right? And I think it's probably hugely a big concern in the religious circles, because you're only going to see people that are really confident about their walk with God and their own salvation, and how strongly they're committed to reading the Bible every year and all those things that you don't do. And you're like, I'm a piece of shit because none of that's me. I must not even be a Christian. Does God even know me? And then
in the picture perfect of their family.
But is that so much different than church on Sunday morning though?
I don't know, because I think the difference at church is, there's ostensibly a room full of people that are more like you than the person who's on the other end of the camera as a content creator, right? But if you're seeing 400 content creators that all seem to be really locked on and get it, and you're like, I'm the only one that doesn't get it. You know what I mean? I think, but I get your point.
Because you're isolated.
Yeah. It was funny that you say that, because again, here I'm doing the thing that I laugh.
Oh, your church is so awesome.
My pastor yesterday,
you're doing Brian, it right. Let's hear it.
So Pastor Brian on yesterday during service, he actually made that comment. He said, there's been times that I wasn't sure. He's like, there's times now that I'm not sure. So if any of you in this room think that I'm always convinced that I know what I'm doing, he goes, there's plenty of days that I question it. I'm not even sure I'm reading the Bible right. Maybe, does God, am I supposed to be here? Like, am I actually called to do what I'm doing? He's like, there's days that I question that. He's like 100%. And I thought it was really cool for him to say that, because I think it's easy to forget that, even, priests, pastors, etc., they're humans, and they
fall into that idolatry.
They certainly have, flaws and have self-doubt. And that was kind of what the point of the service was about, doubting, just doubting God, right? Like that it's, that's just a normal thing. And it happens in the Bible. Like, Abraham doubted, God was like, hey, I'm going to do this. And he was like, you're going to do what? You know how old I am? That was kind of how we got to that point of the conversation.
I go back to Elijah's suicidal despair a lot along those lines. But anyway, it's a little off topic from the social
slightly dark
thing. Yeah. Well, but it's not really. I mean, it in the moment it is. Like Elijah believes. This is after the I'm just gonna give you the back of the book synopsis here. Elijah's just had his big showdown with the prophets of Baal, where they put up
when he was talking mad trash to him.
Right. And then like Baal didn't answer.
Wizard's duel.
Yeah. Yahweh answered with lightning that consumed the sacrifice, and then he commanded the, he called the people to slaughter the priests of Baal, and then he thought like, cool, Israel's going to repent now. My work is successful, but then the queen issues a death warrant for him, and everybody seems to take this seriously. So he runs off and goes to basically he just kind of collapses in a heap and prays that God would just let him die. An angel appeared to him and gave him food and told him to, he needs strength for the journey. And then he went to Mount Sinai, and God told him to I don't remember the exact wording, but there was a series of events where he was looking for God, and one was a whirlwind, and God was not in the whirlwind, and then there was an earthquake, and God was not in the earthquake, and then but eventually there was a quiet whisper, and that was apparently the presence of God. And then God kind of explained to him that even though basically he was suicidal because he felt like he failed to turn Israel back to proper worship of Yahweh, but God told him that that he doesn't see the outcome of his ministry, but through his ministry, God has reserved 7,000 who have not bent the knee to Baal. But anyway, I go to that a lot when I feel like I've wasted my life.
All is lost.
Yeah. That there's, I don't see the outcome of anything I'm doing, but yeah, anyway, so that was that. I don't think I present a curated, glamorous view of myself on social media. I think I'm pretty honest about stuff.
Well, but you're also not like a traditional content creator, right? Like, I think that's a part of it. That's the gimmick of a traditional content creator is it's only their best days. We've been pretty transparent on this show. Like, this is the extent of my content creation, right? And this, I feel like in this show we've been pretty damn transparent about when we have doubts and when we're confused or frustrated or that kind of thing. So I at least take a little bit of solace in that we don't put on a false front kind of deal. I don't know. Tell us what you think, listeners. Do you think we're all full of shit?
I think
you think you're perfect.
I think the response is going to be like, of course you guys are putting up a false front. There's no way you guys are that handsome in real life. There's some kind of filter going on.
Filter free, baby.
But no, this is us.
Gen X
in the flesh, baby.
Yeah. So, but I do think
speaking of Gen X in the 80s, because I'm in a hotel, so all that's on my TV is HBO because that's all you can do. Superman was on earlier.
Which one?
The one where Lex gets kryptonite and puts it around Superman's neck. I don't know. That's one or two.
Okay,
one,
that's
right?
The first one.
The movie.
First one.
Yeah,
that's the original.
Margot Kidder, pretty mid.
Oh yeah.
I was always kind of curious about that. Like, I think like if you look at the screen test, she looked a lot better. Like, she looked a lot more like healthy and kind of vibrant in the screen test. So you could buy it. But yeah, I always wondered like what is like that must be one of his superpowers is just loving Lois Lane, because she's not.
She looked better in Amityville Horror.
She treated him like crap. Was that her? I thought that was Karen Allen.
No, it was Margot Kidder in the Amityville.
But no, it was just on, and I was like, "Oh, I got to bring this up to the guys because I know y'all are big Superman fans." And I'm like Clark,
yeah,
Soup could have done better.
Yeah.
It's funny because in every iteration of Superman, Lana's always better.
You're not wrong. Yeah.
The newest one, I thought Lois was all right.
Newest one with Amy Adams.
Oh, Amy Adams. Yeah. Well, there's no Lana in Steel.
There is, but she's like a little girl.
Okay. And it's Smallville. Actually, I go back and forth with Lois and Lana in Smallville, but
yeah.
Superman and Lois, Lana.
Where in my Superman shirt right
Soup?
now. But
I don't
Superman?
I don't even remember who Lana was in that movie.
and which one?
Superman 1, the original.
She wasn't. So she was in Superman 3, and it was the redheaded girl
it
who
was-
actually is way better looking than Margot
It
Kidder,
was
even though
Annette-
she's not. Yeah.
Annette
And she-
O'Toole, who went on
Annette
to play
O'Toole.
I mean, the
Martha
chick that
Kent.
saved Superman was better looking.
Oh, Miss
Miss
Tessmacher?
Eve
Yeah.
Tessmacher.
Miss
Yeah.
Tessmacher!
But
So
but my mother's in Hackensack.
regarding social media and Christianity, I can't help but think of, speaking of Superman, who is a journalist in real life, newspapers, printing press. The printing press had far more to do with the Protestant Reformation than Luther's 95 Theses.
Agree.
And I mean, I don't, not to downplay the importance of the 95 Theses, but there were reformers who showed up before him who were just killed and silenced. They had movements that survived them, but they didn't really take off. It was only with the advent of the printing press that the Bible and thought itself could be democratized, and the monopoly of the Roman Catholic Church was destroyed. I can't help but draw comparisons between that and modern and the internet today, where you don't really, the local church is less and less important in the life of Christianity in terms of the exchange of information, where people are getting fed, so to speak.
No, I mean, I think you're right. So anecdotally, just to respond to that. So my dad lives in San Antonio, right? And he goes to and watches a local church. He also watches my church's stream, largely because I produce it. Right? So he's consuming 2 churches every Sunday, and then he consumes our show. And, to your point, 2/3 of his consumption of religious information has nothing to do with his geography, right?
But on the other hand, I don't think anything that happens online can replace an in-person community. And I think
also agree with that.
I think it's a mixed bag.
Well, it's a great tool to help that
Yeah.
in-person community.
But and there were downsides to the Protestant Reformation too. Not that I don't think it was a vast improvement on medieval Christianity and the papal monopoly on theology and doctrine and the Bible and all that stuff. I mean, to put it bluntly, I hate Catholicism. Being freed of it was the best thing that ever happened to Western civilization.
We're talking social media, and Islam's getting strays, Catholics just catching bullets.
But the problem is there's so much of a proliferation of ideas that Christians should be aware of that. It's just the local church that you happen to fall into, that doesn't necessarily mean they're right, but there are all kinds of pressures to go along with what you hear there and not question it. And the internet is a great counterbalance to that. But again, just how do you sort through it all? And I think they're I don't have a fully organized thought on this, but I do think that, I was talking about before how the advent of mass media, where it kind of flooded our culture with stories and kind of sidelined the church in that role. Well, I said that was a net positive. I think that I think it was a net positive because that function as the default community center and purveyor of stories and inculcating those values that's not really the same. Like that's how the church has thrived for centuries. That's how it kind of came into cultural dominance. And that's kind of what it coasted on. And that's just sort of, as long as it was fulfilling that function, everybody just kind of assumed it was everything was all was well and the church was doing what it was supposed to. But all of that stuff that we're talking about with stories inculcating values and beliefs and identity and fulfilling this social function, that is not spiritual rebirth. That's just indoctrination. At best, it's education, which can lead to spiritual rebirth, but it's not the same thing. But the fact that the church has been kind of crowded out of that role by Netflix and movie theaters and everything else that competes for our attention, that gives different stories and different values, kind of exposes the fact. I mean, that's the main reason Christianity is dying. But it kind of exposes the fact that it wasn't fulfilling, at least not primarily, not actively and consistently and successfully. It wasn't fulfilling that primary role of being the vehicle of spiritual rebirth. Whatever.
It's funny that you mentioned Netflix, because as you were leading up to that point, you made me mentally draw a relation and a line between the church and Blockbuster, right? Because, you know, there's essentially a social crossroad that's occurring, right? Because of technology, because of social constructs, whatever. And you have a choice to either change or don't, right? And Blockbuster had a chance to change and they didn't, and they died. And they went from being an absolute giant in our culture for about 15 years, right? Seemingly too big to fail. And then these knuckleheads that were mailing out DVDs took over, and now they're one of the largest, you know, influencers from a content perspective.
That is a very good analogy.
Globally. Yeah.
Yeah. The church needs to go deeper than mere indoctrination. But we have a theology and a set of expectations and presuppositions that kind of impedes that. But that's a whole other podcast. But
yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah. Dre, other thoughts?
No, I think we solved it.
I mean, we probably did. I mean, I think that's about the gist of it, right? Is that there's a reality that social media is kind of just here. I think that's what it comes down to. I think that, Brian, that's where I think you kind of landed me there with that and getting me to that Netflix analogy, that the church has, you know, it had a good run. It could have a continued run, and it must have a continued run. And we've got to collectively figure out how to help it so that it can merge with this new manner of information consumption and social interaction, right?
Well,
I think
merge with is that troubles me. I mean, I know I don't know that that reflects your truest and deepest thoughts. I know you were just kind of riffing there, but I mean, it has to transcend that. It has to understand its role in a way that's much deeper and more central to human development.
That's fair.
Than mere.
Intercept would have been a better word choice than merge with, but yeah.
I think that our generation and probably some older millennials are going to be the only ones that resist it. You know, like we're the ones that prefer to go to the movie theater or prefer to go to the mall. You know, I think our kids are not that. So not until all of us die will, you know, the social media and the AI completely take over, you know, that space. And so it is important that we help Christianity transcend what is the trend and where it's headed, because soon no one will remember and no one will care. And then it'll just change like everything else does. And and is it a good or a bad thing? I don't know. It's just a different thing. I think it's neutral, right? You're on mute, bro.
I think that's
Yeah.
also true that, social media in of itself isn't a sentient entity, right? It
Right.
doesn't care. It doesn't have feelings.
Not
It just
that we
is.
know of.
Right. Yeah. And we, and really it's our feelings about it that makes it positive or negative, not whether it exists or whether it's doing its job, because we're the ones that have to actually still do the job.
I envision a time in the not too distant future when people will collectively understand the dangers of social media and the internet, and there's going to be there's going to be limits. I think people are going to like form into communities where there's going to be like one house with a community computer that people.
You think that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's gonna be a social movement where people kind of unplug and kind of distance themselves from this constant, this constants of being online. And they're gonna kind of put it in its place, and they're gonna want to go touch grass and live their life that way. But when they need to conduct business, or when they have some, they're gonna see it as a tool that has its place, and they're gonna go kind of, go to their local internet cafe in their gated community, where they grow their own vegetables and raise their own chickens and stuff. And they also have their little internet shack that they share, and that's gonna be how they deal with, all of the cancerous side effects of social media and internet pornography and cyberbullying and all the unintended consequences that we know about, and all the ones that we're only now discovering. I think people are gonna. I don't know that everybody's going to do that, but I think that will be a way of life in about 30 years.
I think Brian's read too many Dune books, but I do think that there will be
Can't read too many Dune books, dude.
I do think there will be I think we're going to see a swing back away from online things. I think as this next generation is raising kids, I think this generation that was essentially raised in social media is going to recognize, because I think they already know how potentially dangerous and harmful that social media can be. And I think we're going to see them really limit what they let their kids do. And I think that's going to be kind of the natural limit. I don't think it'll be quite to Brian's idea of, these communal environments, but I think we'll certainly see. I don't think we're going to see a bunch of little kids running around with wearables and whatnot. I think we're going to see parents saying, "No, I'm not going to let my kid play with an iPad all day long."
Bet you $1 billion.
Even though I did, right? I think we're going to see some of that.
I don't know.
I think we're both being hopeful.
Yeah, I think so too. And as I watch, my young mothers in my own house raise, my grandchildren, I think you might be onto something. And I'd like to think that, my influence on that, or definitely their mother's influence on that, helps move that along properly. So tell us what you think, if that theory is right or wrong, or if you have your own theory, go ahead and comment. And yeah, anything else, fellas? We solve it.
I think we solved it. I think we solved it.
And with that, I'll say stay curious, stay enlightened, and we will see you next week. God bless.